So ikhwa, we stand. To Allah we raise our hand. The lessons we must take, the amends we will make.
When we're covering the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah Azza wa Jal says, "Ba'ala a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wa kullan naqussu alayka min anba'ir rusuli ma nuthabbitu bihi fu'adak, wa ja'aka fi hadhihi al-haqq wa maw'izatun wa dhikra lil mu'minin." And here Allah Azza wa Jal is reminding us that specifically in the Surah of Hud, the stories of the messengers that are mentioned, that specifically here in the ayah, all that we relate to those of the stories of the messengers, with it we make firmly in your fu'ad, your hearts, i.e. the believer who's reading the Quran, and who specifically here the Prophet ﷺ, but the rest of the generations that will come up until Yawm al-Qiyamah. In them there is the truth. Number one, these are not just stories to amuse us. Rather, these are stories of people of the past and how the messengers were delivering the message of Tawheed, and it's an exhortation and a message of remembrance to those who believe, i.e. us. So I wanted us to bear that in mind, that the stories that we've been covering of the Ulul Azm, Musa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Nuh and Isa alayhi salam, is to remind us of where we have come from as an ummah and where we are going. So we should always bear that in mind. First and foremost, I wanted us to kind of reflect on the principle of shukr, as the brother Allah yabarak fik Ibrahim recited, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Verily, we start off by thanking Allah Azza wa Jal for having made us Muslims. For verily, this is probably the most expensive thing that we have and the most dear thing that we have been given. Guidance after this life that Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed us with. And secondly, the fact that we've been gathering in this mudarasa, reflecting over the words of the Quran, the mawa'id that have been given by the ustads that have been coming, the reminders for us. As we go through the trials and tribulations of life, the days go by, we need to be reminded always. فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. For verily, the reminder always benefits the believer. And part of that shukr, thank Allah Azza wa Jal that number one, He has made us Muslims. Number two, that He has also given us the ability to thank Him. For verily, قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. And verily, very few of us remember. Very few of us remember to thank Allah in the first place. So that in of itself deserves shukr. And thirdly, for the brothers, may Allah Azza wa Jal reward them greatly with Jannat al-Firdaus al-A'la, for having facilitated these sessions for us every Thursday without fail, and giving their time, subhanAllah, from their busy schedule. So, for verily with that shukr, inshaAllah, we continue by reflecting on some of the things that, the lessons that we have taken from this dars. Number one, I want us to reflect on the ayah in Surah As-Sad, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكَ مُبَارَكٌ. Verily, this Quran is Mubarak, the book that we have been given. We are the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran is Mubarak, which means it has infinite blessings. Every ayah, every single kalam is in its place, is in its rightly place. How it was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam via Jibreel alayhi salam. So in uncovering the tafsir and the tadabbur that we do over that, the reflection, there are many blessings that we get out of that. To the point where if you were to visit the same page of the Quran over 365 days without fail, you'll find that you gain many, many lessons that you would have not gained the previous day or the previous week. And as we've found, as we've covered the stories of the Ulul Azm, many lessons have uncovered themselves, subhanAllah, and many lessons that shall come to uncover themselves for us. So remembering that the book of Allah Azza wa Jal is Mubarak, and we are very much in need of those blessings. And secondly, on this pathway of Talib al-Ilm, for verily all as Muslims, as the ulama say, Talib al-Ilm فريضة min kulli Muslim. Verily, seeking knowledge of our religion is فريضة, it's a fard upon every single Muslim. And how do we understand this? Every single piece of knowledge that you need to carry out the worship of your worship of Allah Azza wa Jal is fard upon you. So verily being here has reminded us of that purpose, to continue upon this pathway. Now that we have uncovered a brief understanding of the trials and tribulations that Ulul Azm went through, it's the beginning of the journey for us to continue upon this pathway. And on this very point, subhanAllah, we need to also reflect. When we go back to our families, how many of us are sharing these benefits with our families? After we've internalized these benefits, we must be those that share the mawa'id, the thamara, the fruits of that which we have studied with our families. And one methodology that a lot of our mashayikh usually give us advice upon is to have a mudarasa at home. Have a day in a week, maybe it's half an hour, sit down, if it's with your children, your wives, etc. Sit down with them. Cover a basic tafsir of the Quran like Ibn Kathir, and try and uncover the kind of reflections and the lessons that you can take. Amthila, Surah Al-Ikhlas. If I were to ask here, how many of us have covered Ibn Kathir, Juz' Amma, at the very least, the entirety of Juz' Amma? Is something to reflect upon. How many of us in our homes are establishing that mudarasa? For verily this is a book that is sent to us as an ummah. We are the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And by the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal raises the people. And verily by this Quran you are debased as well, if you don't take it as the blessing that it is. So we need to reflect on that as well. And in not wanting to kind of stretch on, because obviously this is a social, inshallah, for us to get to know one another as brothers that have been sharing one another's company. Some of the fawaid that I wanted us to kind of remind ourselves specifically that we should have taken, is when we covered in Surah Yusuf the ayah, Wallahu ghalibun ala amri. Verily Allah Azza wa Jal is aware of everything, and He is the best of planners. So in the course of covering the stories of the Ulul Azm, we saw that through the trials that the righteous messengers and the prophets went through, they stood steadfast. The story that comes to mind is Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was thrown into the fire. Verily he felt that even being in the fire was probably the best moment that he had. In that biggest trial that he faced, he found solace to the fact that even when the help, Allah Azza wa Jalla asked him, do you need the help to come to you right now? He said, La. To go through that trial, subhanAllah. And this should remind us a lesson, a very key lesson, is that in every trial and tribulation that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us, or that we are yet to face, we must remember that this is the battleground of the Muslim. This is where the Muslim is made. It's not enough that in the times of ease, of course, you give shukr to Allah Azza wa Jal, but in the times of tests, this is where the Muslim, his iman is truly tested, whether you are truly the Muslim that you say you are. So it's a reminder to us that from the stories of the Ulul Azm, we see that their azm, their conviction, came from the tests and tribulations that they had. And another example of that is the fact that we are also reflecting on these stories 1400 or so years later, and that shows, subhanAllah. One of the other lessons that I wanted us to kind of reflect on is that we have a responsibility. As Allah Azza wa Jalla says, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara." It's not enough just for you individually, as I've just mentioned previously. Bring the people with you on this journey of becoming the best Muslim that you can be. Your family, your local community. What are you doing for your local community? What are you doing for your local area? It could be one thing. It could be that simple thing. Are you using your skill sets for the benefit of the ummah? And lastly, inshaAllah ta'ala, kind of practical steps going ahead, inshaAllah ta'ala, after this section of the dars, is reflecting on our personal relationship with the Quran. If perhaps we're studying tajweed at the moment, or perhaps even further, maybe some of us are memorizing the Quran and taking those steps, what is your daily relationship with the Quran? As I've just mentioned, perhaps we need to kind of spend more time in terms of covering a tafsir of that which we've memorized of the Quran, for verily to really ponder upon the lessons that we have memorized of those ayats. And the tartib here is that having good tajweed is the basis of really reflecting. And after that, being able to access the tafasir, because you can't do a correct tafsir without correct tajweed. So after having a decent level of tajweed comes the tafasir. And then further beyond that, to do the correct tadabbur, it's based on the first three generations of the Salaf al-Salihin. The qawl, the wordings and verily that which has come with that. So this is the tartib we should always bear in mind. Tajweed, tafsir and tadabbur. That to make the best tadabbur, you must have those two levels, working on those two levels in tandem. And also taking lessons from the story of Musa alayhi salam, we saw that the parallels with that of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the life that the lives and tests that he went through, should remind us that in order to truly understand the Quran, we must also dedicate more time to the seerah, to really studying the seerah. Whether it's bite-sized seerah, maybe a page or a couple of pages a week, we must dedicate some time to understand the seerah. And lastly, verily to understand the Quran, we must understand the language in which it was revealed, al-lughat al-arabiyyah. We must take more concerted efforts to improve our study of the Arabic language, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And finishing off with a qissa from Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for him. And he said to Ibn Abbas, by way of the dua, Allahumma allimna al-kitab, subhanallah. And this means, Ya Allah, give him the understanding of the kitab. And there's a lesson here. Because after this dua, Ibn Abbas became one of the authorities in terms of tafsir. And to this day, when you visit some of the tafsir of the Sahaba, he is an authority, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. The lesson that I would like us to take from this is for us to make dua for our children. And the righteous believers, the fellow righteous Muslims within our ummah. Not to have ghil, that you are on a pathway, those that are struggling, those that are trying, everyone, make dua for the Muslims. Verily we find ourselves in a situation that is a testing situation, but we must return to the nusus. Make dua for the Muslims, make dua for your families. Make dua that you have a comprehensive understanding and implementation of the Quran in your lives. And in a different riwayah, the Prophet ﷺ in his dua, he says, Allahumma faqih fi ad-din wa 'allimna bi ta'wil. Allah, give him a depth of understanding, fiqh of the deen, and 'allimna bi ta'wil, an interpretation of the religion. So make dua for your fellow believers, make dua for your families, that they get this mawa'id. For verily the person who has the Quran has something very great. For verily the shafa'ah that the Quran will give you on Yawm al-Qiyamah is a shafa'ah that is very much needed. And ending on this point, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says that one of perhaps the regrets that he had in his lifetime is that he wanted to spend more time going through the ma'ani of the Quran, the meanings of the Quran. And if Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is saying this, what of us, oh brothers? Let's spend more time, inshaAllah, uncovering the fruits of the tafasir and the lessons and the blessings of this Quran. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. بارك الله فيكم.
إخوة is Ali.